I'm like usually tapped out, but
hey everybody, it's Will back with another episode of Creators Outlet. Tonight we're joined by Michael Dolce. Before we jump into everything, I hope you get the last name right. Before we jump into everything, I'm going to give a big shout out to our sponsor for this video, SpinWiz Comics at spinwizcomics.com. It is a web and indie comic discovery platform that is free to download on iOS and Android, where you can read a whole bunch of free comics.
I like free.
And, what's wrong with that? Go check it out for yourself. Download the app. If you enjoy it, please give them a 5-star review. We're trying to get them up to 100 downloads and 5-star reviews by the end of the month. And here's what it will look like on your phone. And now, on with the program. Michael, welcome, fellow podcaster.
That's right.
And comic creator. I'm not a comic creator. I just talk to you guys all the time.
Well, we were just talking backstage. Starting the podcast was a way to reignite my network in comics as a comic book creator and put myself as a comic book creator back in the forefront. So I think it's all connected somehow.
Yeah, it seems to be it's 2020. There's nothing to do. Either you're creating comics or you're doing a podcast.
Yeah, that's very true.
So tell us about how you got into the industry and about your journey so far.
Oh man, I mean it's been a 20-year journey. So it's definitely been it's crazy. It's been 20 years, but I've always been wanting to do comedy. I've always wanted to do comics. Comics were, the thing that I absolutely loved and always loved doing. So when I was in college, I remember, very profoundly, I took an internship at a design company. I was an art major, and I remember getting home. So I'm based in New York City, right outside on the Jersey side, and taking the bus home, and I saw these just people that looked very unhappy or tired or whatever the case might be. And, I kind of said to myself, I'm like, no, man, I want to make comics, man. I want to enjoy myself and I want to make sure that what I'm doing is the best thing I possibly can do. And so, from that day forward, not even from that day forward. I was creating comics when I was 11, it's not something, it was always there, and, so self-published my first book. It was actually my senior project, was a book called Crossfire. And it was about a superhero forced by his own costume to fight evil. It was the best mistake I ever made. I learned all the things you don't do. I didn't have diamond distribution. I did everything. I wrote, I drew it, I inked it, I lettered it, I colored it. I went and I created a font based on my handwriting, everything to the T was me. And I sent it off to Diamond, and they're like, no, art's not good enough. And I'm like, well, shoot, now what do I do? Lucky for me at the time, and I'm sure maybe some of your listeners remember this. I hope you would remember this as well. Wizard Magazine. Wizard Magazine was right in my town. It was right where I grew up. I actually knew, I shopped at the store before it was a magazine. I remember when I was 10 or 11, they were talking about turning their newsletter into a magazine. That's how far back that went and how deep I happen to be, involved in that. And not involved personally, but just fly on the wall kind of thing. And so I applied and I got an internship there in college, and I got a full-time job there, and I became the website editor for them for a number of years. So I was there from 2002 to 2006. And it was around 2004. I was like, you know what? I don't remember who she was, but we were at Wizard World, Texas one year in 2004. And I was busy interviewing all of the creators there. And it was actually one of the worst jobs on the planet for me, because I was talking to all these people that were making comics. So it was a very glass box kind of life. It was I could look, but I couldn't touch. And And I had a conversation with someone there, and she's like, well, whatever happened? And I'm like, well, I tried and it didn't work out. And she's like, so you're going to give up? And I'm like, well, no. And no. And from there, I reimagined Crossfire. I brought on a super talented artist by the name of Dan Leister, who's like one of my best friends now. I mean, really, we both kind of came in the industry at the same time, and we really re-released it as a new superhero comic called The Sire, Sire, and same concept, superhero forced by his own concept to fight evil. Brought Talon Caldwell on to do covers for us, and took a second pass at Diamond, got in. Had one of had a very, very successful and critically acclaimed run on that, and that was around 2006. So 5-year span between when I first started and when I finally had success, and from there, everything kind of snowballed. It was 5 years of just networking and paying my dues, and did some stuff for Zenescope. I wrote some Grim Fairy Tales comics for them, and also I still colored my own book because I had the art major background and the coloring background, and I worked on a small indie project in 2005 for a company called Silent Devil, which they're definitely not around anymore, but the creator who wrote the comic that I colored was like, hey, I got a book at Image. Do you want to color the book at Image? And I'm like, well, yeah, of course I do. He's like, I have no money. I can't give you anything. And I'm like, I don't care. That's fine. But what he did was he allowed me to get introduced to Jim Valentino and Kristen Simon, who were at Image. And I was able to, pitch my own stuff. And they took on a book that was co-created by myself and a really talented fellow by the name of Marcus Perry, who's out in LA. He directs, he's like big in the commercial world out there. So he does a lot of really great directing of like movie stars for their upcoming films and stuff. And, they took on our book. It was called Descendant. So I ended up having a big Image eye on my resume, and it was pretty cool. So around 2009 was just, all sales, all sales ahead, everything kind of shooting forward. Took a little bit of time off, came back. My editor had gotten let go, kind of floated around. I brought Sire back. We had done 6 issues in a trade. And tested Kickstarter out with a book called Undone. This is at 2014. So that was my first doing stuff. I had published some Sire books independently, not through Diamond at that point. And right around 2015, I kind of said, how am I going to, like, a lot of my contacts had kind of dried up, and it wasn't the same, being in the industry. So I said, how am I going to re-energize myself here, and how am I going to get myself back out in the forefront? And so I decided to start a podcast. And in 2015, that was Secrets of the Sire. So I just kind of went full on brand and renamed my company Sire Studios. And the podcast, it did everything it was supposed to do and more. It got me reconnected with Zenescope. They published my next book, which was Mainstream, co-created by Talon Caldwell, who's another good friend of mine. And that was in 2018. And then just last year, Secrets of the Sire actually got acquired by a new digital company that just started. And we literally just launched the website for the new company. It's called Rogue Matter. We renamed the podcast Rogue Wave. So we are the Rogue Wave podcast now. And I've just been signed on to do, multiple projects with them as well, too, including my backdrop, which is they acquired The Undone, which was my Kickstarter book, which was pretty cool. So I had launched the first issue in 2014. I was always like, I'll do that second issue. Kickstarters, which we'll get into, they're a lot of work. They're a lot of work, and it's aggravating work. It's that, like, I am a hard worker. Like, my wife actually complains sometimes because I'm like a workaholic, and I really am. But the stuff that I love to do is either engage with folks like you, or engage with an audience, or write or draw. I hate promoting, and Kickstarter is all about promoting. And so it's a reflex that I remember doing it. It was so mentally stressful. 30 days. I don't even do Kickstarters for 30 days anymore. I won't even try that. It can be extremely stressful. And so to kind of work with Rogue Matter now, and they'll be publishing the book, and they'll be and we actually just did a Kickstarter, but they have a team, and so it's a totally different experience doing that. And just want to give a shout out to James Massia. He and I just did another Kickstarter previous to this. It was through his company, Dren Productions, called Plan 59 from Outer Space. It's a sequel to Plan 9. And
I saw that one.
Yeah. So it's been great. Sire is strictly Kickstarter now, but I'm writing and drawing that book. We're going to be coming back out in 2021. And for the most part in 2015, when I opted to start the podcast and radio show, it was, I quit my job. I just went in full tilt, and I've been creating ever since. So, those kind of like ultimatum decisions that you make with yourself, do I give up? What do I do? I kept pushing, and now, this year, despite the world ending, has actually been like one of my best years. I mean, it's crazy. We had the Descendant Kickstarter last year, which was great. We finally, Marcus and I collected all 3 issues, put it in a trade paperback, put that on a Kickstarter. That got funded. Put the new Sire trade out, last year also. More stuff coming out this year, and more stuff coming out next year. And that pretty much is it. So nothing too much. I haven't accomplished too much.
Not a lot.
No.
You should have tried harder.
Mm-hmm.
But at least you got a Red Solo Cup.
Oh man, it's Friday night.
It's Friday night, and we're sitting around talking about comic books and podcasts. And
yeah.
So you said that there's a team that works on the Kickstarter now. It's not you doing all that tedious work. So are you strictly just working on the book, and there's a group of other magical beings just doing all that Kickstarter stuff? Or
it's actually, well, yes and no. I like to give I like to give props to them, because I think the folks at Rogue Matter, Christiane is the business manager. So first of all, Rogue Matter, just kind of give you a little bit of background about them. They're a new digital startup company. They're based in LA. They're trying to bridge the gap between new talent and Hollywood, because that's where they come from. And so the team behind that, and has that ability, so the whole time I've been working behind the scenes to try to get the meeting, right? Like that's what I want, right? I want to be able to, pitch. And I've done some successful pitching in my life, where I was in NBC. I was in there in 2017. I was pitching some TV show ideas, and and in 2018 I was shopping a TV pilot, and so there's a lot of straightforward, like just screenwriting stuff that I was able to kind of like pitch and stuff. But it was never, it didn't have a full force of somebody behind it. And now what Rogue Matter provides is again, like I said, a team of people that are behind it, in terms of trying to get new talent, undiscovered talent, diverse talent just out there. And I'm just so proud to be a part of that. And when they bought the podcast, I'm basically in charge of the podcast network that we're trying to grow. We're trying to just build, it's not just comics, it's digital content, it's short stories, it's novels, it's films, it's video, it's podcasts, scripted podcasts. I mean, you name it, we're basically, producing a whole bunch of content. Kickstarter is something that it just naturally meshes with what the message of Rogue is. Rogue is all about community. It's about building a community. And that's what Kickstarter is, really. It's reaching out to a community. So when I say we have a team of people, it's a team of people out there that, we're it helps to, kind of have multiple people that can handle social media promotion, and can handle, putting the page together, and, doing all this kind of stuff, which is amazing. It also just kind of helps having other people who are just as driven as you are, and they're excited about your project, so it's not just, I'm definitely not hands off. I was promoting. I mean, the Kickstarter never gets any easier in terms of promotion, but at least there's a small group, 4 or 5 folks who are working with me, as opposed to just kind of being on an island. I know you mentioned you don't do comics, you don't make comics, you talk to comic creators and stuff. That's when you're doing a Kickstarter, to be like, just you're a one-man solo enterprise, and you are just pitching the hell out of yourself, and it's really what you're doing, right? You're promoting yourself. You're out there, and so just to even just have folks who are unified behind you is it's really special. So folks can go to roguematter.com right now, and they can preview all this stuff. The other cool thing about Rogue Matter that I'm excited about is it's a completely free website. We're not selling any books. The Kickstarter is actually just going right to the creators. So any money made is going to go to promoting the creators and making them front and center. So and just kind of giving a little extra to them. So my art team on this is gentleman named Sue Sherpa. He does the pencils and inks, and Bhakta Rajin is the colorist. I do the writing and lettering. So all the funds go to us. So it's completely a community building kind of move. The reason they also want to do Kickstarter, because the rest of the content is actually going to be, like I said, free on the website. It's again kind of testing this water of attracting. Kickstarter has like when I did Kickstarter in 2014, it took me a while. It took me about 2 years to actually wrap my head around what Kickstarter was. I remember when I first heard about it in like 2012 or 2013. I forget. I was like, I don't want to ask my friends and family for money. Like it felt weird. Like it felt like I was like, I'm like, no, I've been published before. I don't want to like beg for money. And then I've self-published before, right? And so there was this hesitancy. But then once you figure out, and this kind of developed over time, Kickstarter became a place people went to find new projects and find new comics. It's like the second biggest distribution model now, behind like bookstores, or Amazon. So that's kind of where Rogue wanted to go. Like they want to be where the community is at. So Kickstarter is a logical place for it.
Now, I know Kickstarter is it's the big name brand, kind of like, eBay is the name brand for, selling all your stuff. And, but why choose that over Indiegogo?
So I've actually, there's a couple reasons. I think depending on who you ask, Facebook Kickstarter is like the Facebook to Indiegogo's MySpace, right? There's a difference in that. The ticking clock, the funded or not funded, which you can do on Indiegogo, but that's not really what Indiegogo has made a name for itself. Indiegogo has made a name for, you can, if you choose to, if you're asking for 2,000, you get 1,800. Well, you still get the money. Whereas Kickstarter is like, nope, 2,000, you came 1999, you're short. That's it. So there's a little more sense of urgency to it. In this particular case, I don't think there's any reason one was picked over the other, except again, Kickstarter just has a bigger name in terms of following. I know I tried an Indiegogo project with the Sire in I want to say either 2018 or 2019. The book was featured on the CBS show The Evil. It was kind of in the background. I mean, it was nothing great. It wasn't super featured, but it was cool. It was like cool to see my character on TV. It was kind of cool. So I was like, oh, let me do a variant of the trade paperback, and I put it on Indiegogo, and just like crickets, like absolute crickets. Meanwhile, I mean, I go on Kickstarter, and we're funding books, so it felt like just a different audience. So I don't think there's anything wrong with it, because I know there's a lot of folks out there who've gone to Indiegogo and made a lot of strides on Indiegogo. So I don't know. In this again, for this particular case, Kickstarter was just the place to be. I think once you start building a Kickstarter audience, it's like Pepsi and Coke, like that's the people that are following that. Doesn't mean Indiegogo can't work. Now I know Indiegogo just launched like an ongoing platform, almost like an online store. So I mean, that's something that I'm going to definitely get a lot of the content that I have on as well too, because look, at this point, there's nothing wrong with getting in as many platforms as you can, because again, there's an audience for Indiegogo, there's an audience for Kickstarter, there's an audience for Smashwords and Amazon and all these places. So there's no reason to limit yourself especially if you're an indie creator right now.
Yeah. Well, the pluses that I've heard from Indiegogo is number one, more of the money gets to the creators.
Yeah.
Number two, there's something where they can do you get to do like a pre-launch, and you get to do that with Kickstarter as well.
Yep.
Where you just drive your audience to basically sign up, so as soon as it launches.
Yeah, that's on Kickstarter now. I mean, they definitely, it's funny. It's great. I mean, look, the competition is great, right? Because without the competition, they wouldn't keep striving to kind of like borrow from each other and top each other, So, Indiegogo started that, and Kickstarter, applied it. I think Kickstarter is also allowing you to do add-ons now, because there's a company like BackerKit that was a huge find. Like BackerKit's an amazing tool for creators out there, where it literally just gives you the opportunity to upsell some other stuff to the same people that already bought your stuff. So it's like, oh, by the way, do you want to buy the pin, or do you want to buy the magnet, or do you want to buy the extra print? It's like, oh yeah, I kind of do. Like, oh, I remember I kickstarted it. I gave
click. Yeah.
Well, Boom Studios even said, right? Like, so Boom took a lot of flack for being on Kickstarter for their Keanu Reeves project. But Boom understands what it is and what all these platforms are now. These are just distribution models. Mm-hmm. Yes, it's about supporting community, and yes, it's about supporting up and coming creators. But it's just as much, he said it. He's like, look, there's an audience of people out there. One click, you get the whole book. You forget about it for 9 months. It shows up in your mailbox 9 months later. Like, it's like, you can't beat that, So why wouldn't creators want to be on there,
Well, I heard I wasn't hearing a lot of flack from a lot of people, but I heard enough to know that there were a bunch of indie guys that were and gals that were upset that all these bigger publishers, mm-hmm. like Boom, Dynamite does it all the time now. Yep. With Kickstarter and Indiegogo. They're like all over the place for it, and some of it aggravates me. Mm-hmm. with Dynamite. And don't get me wrong, I love Dynamite.
Yeah.
And more importantly, I love Vampirella. But it irks me when I hear a creator that I love is been hit up to do an exclusive cover for a character I love. Mm-hmm. And then I go there and they're doing a cover and they're just slapping it on an old book.
Yeah.
I think that's weak, the same way I think Hollywood is weak when all they're doing is like remakes.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, the audience is built in for it. I go, yeah, but you have this movie, and this movie is brilliant the way it is. It stands up to the test of time.
Sure.
And
that's like fear, right?
And, quit ruining my childhood.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, it's just all fear, right? Like, it's interesting too, because if you think about it, right? Like, these are people that want established brands. Like I just read, I guess, I Know What You Did Last Summer is going to be on an Amazon Prime series. And you're like, really? Like, that movie? You're going to turn that into a... But immediately I know I know that movie. Like, I recognize it. And, in this day and age, in some ways, I wish I was 20 years younger. I wish I was starting in this day and age when you have live streaming and you have, YouTube and you have Facebook and you have like all these outlets, and Amazon and Kickstarter and all these things. You have outlets to just get your stuff out there, and there's no middleman, and it's great. In many ways, though, being established in the industry for 20 years has been more of an advantage than anything else, because A, I already have the connections, and that's a good thing. B, I have the credibility also, and that's a good thing. But C, You know, I think there's a lot of noise out there too, and there's a lot of up and coming creators. I mean, I've pledged a bunch of Kickstarters that I've never seen. Like 2 years later, I'm like, where's the book? You know, like where's your book? I haven't even, and it's tough to, I think music. I'm a big music guy, and that's a problem too. Like everyone's like, well, there's no good rock bands out there. And I'm like, well, there's no good rock bands that we can hear because it's just if you're a band, you just throw your stuff up on SoundCloud or YouTube and you hope for the best, right? I mean, it's there's just so much competition, and so cutting out the gatekeepers, yes, there's an inherent positive to that, but no, there is also, hey, you are when there's no gatekeepers, Crossfire, my first book, I look back on it, yeah, the art wasn't good enough. Like Diamond was right. Like Diamond was looking at it as what is going to sell in a comic book store. And unfortunately, my art at the time just wasn't up to par. And nowadays I could have taken that to Kickstarter and I could have made a couple grand off it. So there's a positive to that, but there's also a negative to it in the fact that my art, if I didn't reach, I don't know, I feel like I wouldn't have benefited as much as I did having had that, in the loss column rather than the win column.
Oh yeah, because I know, just from doing this podcast, I get, hit up. Well, we get probably about 20 or 30. I get like about 20 or 30 emails or, DMs a week.
Yeah.
From people, that either see the podcast or, reviews I'm doing or whatever. And like, well, I got a Kickstarter, can we get it up on your brand or,
Mm-hmm.
and, sometimes I look at it and, it's a great project.
Yeah.
And other times I look at it and
we live in an age right now where criticism is viewed as bullying. And don't get me wrong, some of it is. I mean, some of it is just people being mean. People have been mean for all of time, right? Like your stuff sucks. That's not criticism. That's being mean or being negative, right? But then there's also some people saying like, I just didn't think it was a good idea, or I just didn't think the artwork was good enough, or nothing about that attracted me. So somebody sent me a Kickstarter recently, then they want to be on the show, and I saw one of them, and I read it, and I'm like, honestly, in my head, I was like, there's nothing about this that's appealing to me. And I could be wrong. It just might not be for me. But the way they presented it on Kickstarter, I'm like, I don't even want to back this. Not because these guys might be the nicest people in the world. And I hope they are. And I hope their project succeeds. So I'm not rooting against it. But reading it and seeing the artwork, I'm like, So it's an interesting thing. And that's, we live in an age where the work is not necessarily right now the most important thing. It's who's making it and the story behind it, and there's merit to all that, because I think there is merit to people working really hard on something, but there's also merit to, I did get sent another Kickstarter and I was like, the artwork's great. It's got quotes from Brian Michael Bendis, who read it and said it was great. I'm like, all right, I'm in. Like, I'm in. There's an indie guy, and the concept looked interesting, and the art looked interesting, and very professional. I'm in. I backed it, and hopefully we'll have him on the show pretty soon, just to kind of help promote it and talk about it. So yeah, no, it's a weird time we live in right now.
Yeah, it's definitely weird, and it's going to get weirder because Mad Max is showing up next year.
I hope not.
Well,
I want to go back to conventions, man. I can't wait.
Oh, I know, but I mean, I was watching the original Mad Max on Pluto the other week, and
okay.
And at the beginning of the movie, when they're doing like the pans of all the scenery and everything,
sure.
And the year comes up, and it's 2021.
Uh-oh. Well, hopefully we make it there. That would be good.
So we'll see. And they're making a new Mad Max, so we'll find out.
Of course they are. They're making a new everything.
Yeah.
I mean, we just had Jeff Gomez on. Jeff is his company is called Starlight Runner Entertainment, and they work with movie studios to create story Bibles and story universes. So they've worked with like Avatar. They're a transmedia company that they work on Amazing Spider-Man with Sony. They recently they did stuff with Ultraman. Bringing Ultraman to Marvel Comics and bringing Ultraman, back into the limelight again. And we were just talking. It's like we were talking about how Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire, the rumor that they're signing on for the next Spider-Man movie, and Hugh Jackman, he's going to be back as Wolverine, and there's talk of bringing Quicksilver over from the Fox, X-Men films into the WandaVision universe. So, long story short, nothing is ever over. Nothing's ever dead. If you have something that's recognizable, studios they don't want to take chances. It's so much harder to do something original and new rather than, build something, or just kind of like build off of something that's already established. So yeah, of course it's gonna be Mad Max. There'll be another one. There'll be like 7 more probably.
Yeah. But even though I'm on another podcast called OK Boomer, I'm not quite a boomer. I'm close, but I'm still a Gen Xer. But, I'm apprehensible about lots of remakes of films.
Sure.
And even programs, I was downright angry when I heard, they're remaking Battlestar Galactica. I'm cool. It's nothing like the original. I hate it.
Yeah.
And then I sat down and watched it. I go, oh my God, this is like the best thing I've ever seen. So you never, and just like that in comics, whether it's indie, mainstream, what have you, you don't know until you dip your toes in that end of the pool.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree for sure. I mean, it's again, I think that's kind of the great thing about comics though, too, and podcasting. I got to be honest with you. It's cheaper to do a narrative podcast or a scripted podcast than a comic, because you just have to hire a couple of voice actors and it could be anybody. And they generally work cheaper than artists. But between podcasts and comics, you do have the freedom to just experiment and try something new, and maybe it picks up and maybe it doesn't, Yeah,
well, I tried this and it's still going, and there's enough people liking it, and we're growing the audience a little bit at a time, and
that's all you do. I mean, my show's 5 years old now. I mean, it'll be 5 years in January, which is crazy. And we did 212 episodes, 212 plus, to be honest with you, of Secrets of the Sire, and then Rogue Wave. We're already into episode 32 next week. So it was every week, doing a new show and doing a new show and doing a new show. And it's a lot of work, but the results are, they speak for themselves. We've grown an audience that I'm pretty proud of. It became something more than I ever thought it would. I was able to land some unbelievable guests too, and once you land a few and you kind of get to know some of the publicists and things like that, you end up, once you get a few, it adds the credibility of the show, and then all of a sudden it's like, all right, well, I want to be on that show too. It's like, okay, great. Like, that's great.
Oh yeah, I had a publicist reach out to me, and I'm waiting to hear back from her again.
That's great.
She sent me over Guy Dorian Sr.
Nice.
We chatted about everything for like an hour and a half, and the new book that he was doing with the new company.
Cool.
And then the other week, I got to chat with Frank Forte for a little while.
Nice. Now, let me ask you a question. What is your favorite character, like your comic book You love comics. Like, are you a Marvel guy, DC guy? What's your Joker? Obviously, I can tell you're
Yeah,
DC.
I'm a Batman guy. I grew up, watching all the cartoons, and
Mm-hmm.
I was completely spellbound, and kind of still am, of
Yeah.
the Batman '66.
You know what? I watched the reruns when I was a kid, and there was nothing better, man. There really wasn't.
You know, something about Julie Newmar in a cat suit.
And that doesn't hurt either.
And we didn't have I grew up in like the '70s and '80s, and
Mm-hmm.
there wasn't a lot, because like now every TV show and every movie is a comic book IP.
I know.
And back then we had reruns of the Adam West Batman,
Mm-hmm.
the reruns of the George Reeves Superman, uh, then the Shazam TV show came on.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yeah, I remember being a kid and like I was like aching for some good comic book related content. Like I remember really, um, so I was a child of the 80s and 90s, and Batman I think was the first superhero movie that I remember being in and being like great, right? But then it went downhill. And then you had that time
really
where
quick.
the idea of a comic book movie, I mean, and that's the funny part too. I think kids today don't realize, because everything's a comic book or everything's based off a comic book, just how fragile the notion of a comic book would be. I mean, Blade came out and was great, but they did everything in their power to downplay the fact that it was even based off a comic. They didn't even want to. You didn't even want the studios wouldn't even want you to know that it was based off a comic book because of what it would be perceived as. And that's something that I think is like to kids today would be like, I don't understand, like everything's a comic book, everything's a Marvel universe or DC universe. DC can make sucky movies for up until about 3 years ago, and people still come back and see the next one.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I really didn't hate that Batman versus Superman all that much.
Here's the problem with Batman vs Superman, though. It was like 3 movies in one, and that was the big. If you literally just made one of those movies, instead of Doomsday and Wonder Woman, and it was like DC's like, hey, that Marvel stuff, that's great, Zach, go do that, because the premise is actually, the first hour of that movie is very, very entertaining. Bruce Wayne sees Superman's like, well, shoot, what are we gonna do if Superman ever attacks us? We need to come up with a battle plan. We need to make sure that he's on our side. Totally great movie. Ben Affleck, or great premise, I should say. Ben Affleck, unbelievable Batman, to be honest with you. Like he looks like Bruce Wayne and he looks like Batman. Like he wasn't in the best Batman movie, but he was, I think, the best Batman, amazingly enough. Like I love Michael Keaton as Batman. He did a great job, but that's Michael Keaton playing Batman. It's a very Michael Keaton thing, right? He does an amazing job, but that's Michael Keaton playing Batman. Christian Bale, his bad voice was terrible. It was like little things like that, and he wasn't a detective in that either. I mean, it's amazing. Ben Affleck, I would never have thought. I remember hearing he was going to be Batman. I'm like, I don't want Ben Affleck being Batman. Now I'm like, oh, he's going to be back in the HBO Max series. Yeah, that's great. Batfleck, he's back. So there's pluses to take from it, but I would say, what was it? Wonder Woman and then Aquaman was the Wonder Woman, then Aquaman, then Shazam. I mean, now it's 3 in a row where you have legitimately entertaining DC films because they stopped trying to be Marvel.
Yeah, they just went to be them.
Yeah,
they do have a nearly perfect run on featured animation film, though.
Mm-hmm.
Like Marvel does next to perfect box office movies, and DC does next to perfect animated features.
So what's what it is too? It's again, this is Jeff Gomez was telling us too, because I kept asking him, I was like, how come You can have something like Into the Spider-Verse and it's amazing, but you have Amazing Spider-Man 2 and it's terrible. And he basically said he's like, well, because studio executives don't really
Get
they
it?
don't care, but they don't see animation as legit, right? And not in I don't want to be like in a negative way, but they kind of don't. So they just leave it alone. They just kind of assume it's for kids, and it's not worth their time. So the creators get to work without, a jillion notes and a jillion recommendations and a jillion cooks in the kitchen. They get to literally just, and it's usually a smaller budget for animation too. So again, another reason why the executives are like, well, it'll make money, or it doesn't need to make $1 billion to make a profit. It could make 100 million, and it's a huge profit because the cost for it was so much lower. That kind of studio non-interference is why animated films are just the best. And what Bruce Timm did with Batman the Animated Series, I mean, that was me growing up was watching that show. I mean, it was, he set a template and a standard that you can easily, replicate. Now, let me ask you another question. Look at that. I like putting my podcast host hat on. As a Batman fan, what did you think of the Batman trailer with Pattinson?
I was surprisingly excited.
Oh, all right.
And for certain things that were in the trailer.
Okay.
But the other day I saw all kinds of things where now he doesn't want to play Batman.
Oh, really?
But these are all I think these are all clickbait, rumor mills,
Yeah.
Like we got to discover. But it was the rumor is that he decided he doesn't want to play Batman because he doesn't want to be typecast. Really, Captain Twilight?
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, I heard. I mean, we were just talking the other day, and one of the guys at Rogue Matter is like, yeah, I heard he doesn't want to even be in the same room as the director right now. Like, I guess that's a rumor that's going on now. I mean, I will say, if there's smoke, there's fire. So, I mean, if certain rumors are coming out, I mean, there's got to be some sort of truth to it. But at the same time, I don't know. I mean, the movie hasn't even come out yet. I mean, I know he got COVID from it. Maybe he's got a bad outlook on it because he got COVID. Who knows?
And maybe there's other cast members or people, staff working on the movie, the crew and everything that might have come down with it, and people are just picking stuff out of the air that
Yep.
This sounds good. I think this happened.
Yeah.
Really? How do you know? Oh, I don't. I'm just thinking. And but I was super excited with the Wonder Woman 84 trailer, and super disappointed time after time after time after time of pushbacks from everything.
I know. We're good. I mean, unfortunately, Tenet. So Tenet was the tentpole, right? Tenet was the marker in the sand. If Tenet had made money, now mind you, and I said this on my show, I think it still will, because I don't think it's ever I think Tenet will be the longest released film in movie history. It'll be out for like 3 years, literally 3 years, because of just all of the there's just not gonna be any movies until next summer probably, and there might not even be movie theaters until next. I mean, that's something we have to really take into consideration here. I mean, there are businesses that are just going out of business, and theaters are one of them. I mean, because they're not gonna open up because they don't have anything to attract people. People don't feel safe going to theaters. So Tenet is doing fairly well overseas. Assuming we get through the winter with COVID, maybe a vaccine, maybe treatments coming out. So maybe by next summer, where we're kind of back, I bet you Tenet will still be there. You know, like I don't see why it wouldn't be. I know that. I mean, when's the first new film even scheduled for now? I mean, it's not going to be until what, May, right? I don't think there's a single other. I think Black Widow's coming back out in May. I think Bond is maybe April, maybe I forget when James Bond is coming out, but I don't think
next summer.
Yeah, so I think Tenet will still be there, and Tenet can still make money, but studios look at that and they're like, well, we're not putting anything out now. You know, we're not going to risk, making under $500 million, which is now the marker for like a lot of these tentpole movies just making their money back. So unfortunately, get used to Wonder Woman, get used to all this stuff just being pushed back until life gets back to some sort of normal again.
And I saw the other day where AMC looks, month after month of this, looks more and more like they're just going out of business. They're last week their stock plummeted like another 16 points.
Yep.
So
it's tough to run a business when your business doesn't exist.
Yeah, it's like you can't keep it, and all the cost and taxes, and
Yeah, look, and this is not to get in any way, shape, or form into a political discussion about it, but there is factors that people have to realize go beyond just the risk of getting sick. I think we can do things in a smart way, and I think we can do things in a healthy way. But there are, businesses that are literally going to not survive this, and people tend to think of business or corporations, blah blah blah. And it's like, well, in many cases, it's small businesses. I run small business. I run my own small business, so I have a specific perspective on this, where if my livelihood was kind of taken away, if all my hard work was taken away, I'd be the first ones, I'd be the first one complaining, and just because you're a big corporation, I mean, they're giving us entertainment, they're giving us social entertainment, they're giving us something to go do on a Friday night. I mean, it's these little things like that are we're gonna wake up next year and these things aren't going to be there. Half the restaurants you used to go to, they're not going to be there. And I don't know what the best solution is. So again, I'm not sitting there saying I know, or we should do this or shouldn't do that, but it's not something to just callously throw away either. I mean, this is a, normal is going to look a lot different when we get back to it. And people kind of have to think about that.
It just, I just think it's crazy that, all the big box stores can stay open. I'm like,
right.
What is so necessary at Best Buy?
Right.
No.
Well, I mean, think about it too, right? You can get on an airplane, which is a giant funnel of you're basically enclosed, but you can't go to an outdoor baseball game, You
can't go to a wedding, you can't go to a funeral, right. You can't do this, you can't do that.
Right.
You can't take your kids trick-or-treating.
Right. And don't get me wrong, look.
But you can get on a plane,
right,
where nobody is social distance and packed in like sardines, and fly to Florida.
And you know what? I think it's just the consistency of the message that gets people like upset about it, right? Like when you throw it, when you put it in those kind of like terms, but again, no easy answers, So I mean, I'm not going to choose a side or anything like that. I mean, I think it's a terrible situation one way or the other, but but some decisions kind of scratch your head,
Yeah, I know. The idiot governor of Rhode Island today came out with another news conference and told parents that if they wanted to take their kids trick-or-treating,
mm-hmm.
they had to do it during the day. They couldn't do it at night because the chances of contracting COVID at night were better. Oh, So does that mean we can go out and do everything during the day because COVID only comes out at night now?
That's interesting. I've never heard that one yet. Well, I thought you were going to sit there and say, he said you have to wear a mask. And it's like, well, isn't that what Halloween's all about?
Yeah. I'm like, I'd be more concerned about, everybody has to wear a mask. Okay, let's all go to the bank.
No, it's the one that's not wearing a mask is who you got to watch out for if you go to the bank. That's the guy who's going to rob you. Criminals are very upset with the mask wearing, though, by the way. They're like, well, look, how are we supposed to rob banks now when everyone's wearing a mask?
You took our stick away. So with everything you have going on right now, what is something that you're looking forward to doing next year?
I want to just keep this train going, to be honest with you. I am I have 2 short stories that'll be kind of published. They'll be published on Rogue Matter's site in the next couple months. This backdrop I got is Time Trader. It's about a guy who can rewind time whenever he wants to, tries to take his powers to the stock market, discovers it's run by an Illuminati of people just like him. So I'm busy writing this right now. Like I said, we just got funded. The second issue just got funded on Kickstarter. Rogue's publishing the rest of the series anyway, which is great. So it'll be available next year. I've got another project for Rogue Matter that I'm working on as well too. So honestly, like I said, I'm a pig in slop right now. I'm as happy as can be. Like, just, in 2013, like I said, 2012 and 2013, those were for me from a work perspective and a career perspective, very, very dark times in my life. Not like bad, but just in terms of career, right? Like, my career had hit like a total standstill, and I was talking to somebody, and he goes, well, what would your perfect day be like? And he's like, no, really, picture what is your morning like? Wake up and what do you do? And I was like, I wake up, I go downstairs to my office, and I'm working on something creative. I'm writing, or I'm drawing, or I'm doing something. And that's what, and then I had a 9-to-5 job I was going to at that point. I was, working like an IT company, and I was so far from where I wanted to be. So 7 years later, to be where I am, where I'm waking up every morning. I got 2 kids now, so that's a much different life. 2 young kids right now too, so a lot of energy goes into that. But once we get them off to daycare, and or my wife takes them to our parents, or whatever the case is, I'm walking down the stairs, and I mean, the other day I was literally, I think I have it right here. I'm writing, drawing, doing some sketching. Here's the outline for the story, and can't really see it in the camera, but and I feel like I'm like cheating or something. I feel like something's I'm literally just sketching out panels and writing an outline, and yeah, I'm getting paid for it. That's, I don't know. You can't, to me, I can't think of anything better than that.
Well, 2020 sucked for everybody but creatives.
Yeah.
Because, even if you were going to like an outside office, now you don't have to, and you can just do everything at home, which I'm sure most everybody, writers, artists, and everybody in between, would rather work from home in the first place for the most part.
You know what's funny? So a couple things, right? One is that everyone's going through the same thing right now. So that's been good, right? Like, so it's different. Like, when your life gets thrown for a loop, the rest of the world has no sympathy for you, right? Because, I have an illness, or a death in the family, or I have, I got divorced, or something that rocks your life in a negative way, right? The rest of the world is like, well, that stinks, but the rest of us are moving here. You better keep up, or else whatever. In this case, there is no difference. Like, everyone, like, if I'm taking meetings and I got my kids running around in the background, chances are on the other end, if they've got kids, they're running around in the background too, because, so everyone's in the same boat. So that helps, right? It kind of actually, it allows you to deal with this kind of like disruption in your life knowing that everyone's kind of going through the same thing. And then the second thing, though, my wife is working from home 5 days a week now. She worked from home 2 days a week prior to this. My neighbors never worked from home. They're getting sick of it, actually. They actually want, my wife is actually like, I'm having a tougher time working because I'm in my house. We set up an office space next to her in my office, which I had worked from home anyway. That's just what I did. And she was telling me the other day, she's like, I would kill to go to the office 2 days a week right now. Like, or just even one day. She's like, just one day, because she could be very focused as opposed to working from home. So, and for me, my remote office was like Starbucks. Like I could go to a Starbucks, and it was cool because like I would plant myself down. There's free refills there. I'm a tea drinker, not a coffee drinker, ironically, and they have great teas. And I would just buy one, and I'd get a refill, and maybe I'd buy a snack, and I'd see certain people kind of doing what I do. So it was weird. It was almost like working in like a shared office space. This one woman we had met, she worked out of the Starbucks too, just like me. So it was kind of cool. Working from home is not always what it's cracked up to be, and it's nice to be able to get out. So I think it's interesting. I do love it though. But also, I used to work from home, and no one else was home, so it's also different. Like, it's a different working environment now for sure.
Well, because an office is an office
Mm-hmm.
to you, but now,
Yeah,
depending on the time of day, your office could have some
got
little ones running around.
4-year-old and a 2-year-old running around now. And the nice thing is, I do have like my basement office is closed off for them for the most part. We don't let them down in the basement, just because it's not like it's the office area is the only thing that is finished. But there's a lot of times I'd go upstairs. Nope. Like it, like I know it. I'm like, kind of have to go to the bathroom. Nope, can't go. Can't. Gotta hold it, because if I go upstairs, then I get pulled into this like, other world. And it's also been a blessing to we saved a lot of money from daycare, but B, the amount of time we've gotten to spend with our kids now, like we just wouldn't have. It would be totally different. So for that, we're very thankful for.
Yeah, that's a lot better. Me, it went the other way because my daughter lives with her mother.
Okay.
And the COVID thing was like, yeah, I was like, she's doing, school at home last year. I'm like,
Yeah.
and it was like at the height of everything. I go,
Mm-hmm.
you know what? I'd rather, just leave her there for now. And,
Yeah.
in a few months, see where it is. And it went from that to, her just not feeling like bringing her to my house now. So, I've seen her once in 6 months.
Oh my gosh.
So
How old?
12 going on 20.
Yeah. I have a son and a daughter. My daughter's 2. And I know it's going to flip when it gets around that 12, 13-year-old, but right now she's like the easiest person to take care of. And I grew up with an older sister. My wife was the older sister to a brother. So part of us were kind of like, oh, I wish we kind of want to have 2 boys, because we've never had that, and we'd be interested to see what that's like. But yeah, having a daughter's been just like amazing. Like absolutely. I know they always say the daddy's little girl thing, but it's, I don't know. I don't even like that term, because I feel like it's something different. The love a father has for his daughter is the purest love I think a man can have for a female, because you're not like, even your wife, there's something you want from your wife, right? There's something no matter what, you want companionship, you want this, you want that. Daughter, I just love her, man. I just love her. Like it's a cool thing, man. I got to tell you, it was completely unexpected.
Yeah, I had custody of my daughter from the age of 2 until 2016. Something happened with my health, and I had to get rushed into the hospital, and I died on the operating table.
Oh my gosh.
A few times.
Wow.
And coded in ICU a bunch of times, and
Wow.
they had to put me into a medical coma, and then they told my
Whoa.
friends and family, "Oh, you better make plans. I don't think he's coming out of it." And then one day I woke up,
Wow.
and
What do you remember? Do you remember anything?
oh yeah, I got massive PTSD from everything that happened. They had to do like emergency surgery. I've got like 3 18-inch scars on my right leg, on the right side, left side, and back side.
Wow.
I had 2 separate infections,
Mm-hmm.
and my body went 100% septic.
Wow.
So I had asked the doctor about this growth on the back of my leg. He goes, "Doesn't look like anything, but keep checking." And I was going for
Yeah.
wound care, and he's like, he goes, "We'll just keep checking it every week when you come." And then, one week I didn't make it to the appointment, and they never heard from me for like about a year. And it was because this thing, it blew up to like the size of like a half a softball
Oh my gosh.
in the back of my calf. And it turns out that entire thing was full of sepsis,
Wow.
and it exploded and went whoosh through my body like the Flash.
Holy cow.
And I was at work at the time. I was a nightclub DJ for 35 years. So
Wow.
that's where I get and now back to the program. And but it was crazy. The majority of my collection is actually, and most of my stuff, and a lot of my daughter's stuff is in storage. A friend of mine that I worked with
Mm-hmm.
helped pack it up and hauled it all to his house like the next state over. And now we're desperately trying to get it back because, as you can see, I have a nice big loft that I live in now, and
That's good.
plenty of room. And I'm going through, trying to liquidate and get rid of comics so I can buy more comics. And I'm like, just thinning the herd, and
Sure.
I'll buy something on a whim, and I just pulled out a Teen Titans 12 first Batman Who Laughs,
Okay.
and I look up on eBay and I go, oh, they're selling for like $100-$200, and then I look, but if you spend the $40 to get it graded, it's selling for a little over $800.
Ooh.
So I'm like, yeah, I'll spend the $40.
It's a good move.
Yeah, I'll spend the $40 to.
You do many Comic-Cons? Do you go to many Comic-Cons?
I used to do Boston. I covered Rhode Island last year for Outright Geekery,
Mm-hmm.
which I thought was amazing. I didn't go see any of the Hollywood millionaires. One, they don't need my money. Two, I'm not giving them my money. And I basically, I hung out and did a lot of photos with the cosplayers,
Mm-hmm.
many of whom I already know, and then I just hang out in Artist Alley talking to
Sure.
the freelance guys and everybody else. I sat and talked to a very happy Neil Adams for 45 minutes while he was setting up.
Okay.
And I mean, it's Neil Adams.
Yeah.
I hung out for a while with Graham Nolan, Bill McKay, Mike Grell,
Nice.
Christopher Priest.
What's Mike Grell doing these days? He's not doing any Grendel, is he?
Sadly, no.
No.
Well, he did some the other year, and he's got something in the work, but I don't know what's going on with it right now.
Yeah, I haven't heard hit. That's a name I have not heard in a long time. I did Boston Comic Con a couple in 2018. Um, it really wasn't that good.
I know it went from Boston Comic Con to Boston Fan Expo.
Yeah, I did the Fan Expo. See, Boston Comic Con I went to, and that was great.
Boston Comic Con was great, but I think it switched hands.
Yeah,
And a bunch of the bigger cons, not New York, but when San Diego was like, well, we're trademarking the phrase Comic Con, so you can't use it.
Right.
I'm like, oh, really? Really? You're not even I don't consider it a Comic Con. It's all Hollywood. It's like 90% Hollywood, and then, there's still like thousands of, comic people there, but it's, it's all pop culture. It's not,
Yeah.
I'd rather go to an old fashioned comic show.
Well, I mean, I tell this story all the time too. I mean, I remember what Comic Cons used to be. I mean, even the big ones back in like the early 2000s compared to what they are now. I mean, it's like night and day. It's not just the Hollywood influence, because there was Hollywood influence there, but it was. I mean, just in terms of like who showed up, and I mean, you could count on one hand like how many like women you'd actually see at these shows, and now it's like not just women coming, but I mean, it used to be like guys dragging their girlfriend, maybe. Now it's girlfriends dragging their boyfriend. I mean, I've actually seen that where like the boyfriend's like really not into this and the girls are more into it than the guys are. I mean, it's awesome. It's a totally different, and it's depending on what show you go to. C2E2 is one of my favorites. I mean, it's like a giant party. I mean, and the hotels just kind of let you, hang out in the basically in the hotel, like the Hyatt that's attached to the convention center. I mean, it's just filled with just fans, like cosplayers and fans, and they're just drinking, having a good time. So it's a different experience than it was those years ago.
Oh yeah, the Rhode Island show is good. I remember the first I went the very first year, and I was there for like a good like 6 hours.
Yeah.
And just wandering, and it was smaller then, and there was some kind of beef between the showrunner and the city of Providence.
Yeah.
So the first thing the city of Providence did was send extra cops down when they saw like all the lines and everything, and the next thing they did was send the fire marshal down. Oh, you're way over capacity. Nobody can come in. Not even when they leave. And you had like people like run to their car to get stuff, or like getting stuff, getting books signed, or buying some, nice stuff, and running up to the parking garage to lock it up in their vehicle, and then come back in, and they were being stopped. Cosplayers were, walking around to see what was going on, and then they were going out to their car, getting dressed up in their costume to walk back in, and they couldn't get in.
Yeah.
And so the next thing that he did was he extended it from, it is now all of the Providence Civic Center, which is like the show venue for concerts and various other things. So it's the Civic Center, and the Civic Center is joined to the Convention Center. So it's the entire Convention Center, every single floor, and the entire outer ring of the Civic Center. So it's like still like it's like even like a bigger show now.
Yeah.
But 90% of that is all, the top like 3 or 4 floors are all like, it's nothing but Hollywood. It almost seems like a contest between these different big shows to see how many TV and movie stars we can have more than the last show or what's supposed to be the biggest show like a C2E2 or San Diego or New York, you know?
Reed runs really good comic shows. I got to tell you, New York is my hometown show, and I go to that one every year as an exhibitor. C2E2, I just started doing as an exhibitor too. They run really good shows. I'd like to do Emerald City. I haven't done that. San Diego is just a blast. Actually, it's the one show I go to, and I don't have a booth or anything like that. I just go. Sometimes, like when I did a book at Zenoscope, I was able to do an autograph signing with them. My best San Diego actually is 2009, though, when my Image book came out, because I got to sign copies of my book next to McFarlane, Larson, Lee, Liefeld. Like they had the Image United. So right next to me was like all these guys that, you know, like I idolized growing up. So that was an amazing experience.
You know,
But yes,
I used to like you until you said that.
Well, let me tell you, you know, and kudos to my dad for putting up with this when I was a kid. But I mean, we used to. I remember back in '92 or '93, I forget. I think it was '92. Literally waiting 3 hours outside in the freezing cold. It's like January, February, to get the Image guys to sign my books. It was, you know, it was Jim Lee and Rob Liefeld, and it wasn't McFarlane wasn't there. I think it was Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld, and Mark Silvestri all came to the local comic book store. It's probably '92 because I think it was probably like the Image tour or whatever. And they came to the Wizard store. That was the Wizard magazine store. So, you know, the people who ran the magazine. And so I waited in line. And I got signatures from all of them. And then, so again, to fast forward, you know, 17 years later, and I'm kind of realizing that dream of, you know, having people come and buy my book and autographing, and next to the people I used to wait in line for. I mean, man, that's one of the highest points in my life for sure.
Oh, that is definitely huge. And I mean, come on, Todd is an empire now.
Oh yeah.
You know, he's definitely earned that nickname that that all the fanboys dubbed him with, the Todd Father.
Yeah.
for sure. I mean, you know, he's like, you know, it wasn't enough that, you know, he had his toy company and he was making, you know, phenomenal product, and then he goes and snags the entire DC line, and he's doing action figures and statues and everything for like all these video game properties and some, you know, some movie and TV properties as well. I'm like, man, I remember running around, you know, Toys R Us stores and, you know, various mall toy stores, just trying to find you know, my favorite starting lineup figures for you know, Boston Bruins players. And I'm like, it was like, you know, impossible. And then you go to a kiosk, then you walk by a kiosk in the mall, and this guy with a kiosk would go around to all the toy stores, buy up all the figures, and then quadruple the price on them and put them on his rack. And you know, he was set up like right outside the. There was a sports store in my local mall that it had like, you know, 15% like clothing, like jerseys and stuff, and the rest of the store was nothing but like sports autographs.
Oh man.
You know, and this guy was like sitting like right outside there. I'm like,
yeah.
Oh. But I mean, I just saw. I mean, Todd's got his own virtual convention going on right now.
He's an innovator, man. I mean, look, say what you will, and look, his artwork is top notch too. So I mean, he's got the talent to back up anything he's doing. But I mean, you know, he completely changed the toy industry. You know, I love the story he tells about the Spider-Man eyes, how he kept getting, you know, yelled at for making the Spidey eyes all wide and whatnot, and that became the staple. You know, so you know, he's done everything to kind of like break these traditions and just, he's a disruptor. He's a complete innovator.
And he branched out because, you know, he's like, okay, I'm a huge name in the comic industry now, but what happens when I retire?
Mm-hmm.
I need to do something else. And, he launched McFarlane Toys and,
Yep.
like a little offshoots, like various figures here and there. And then he did like, the starting lineup line and, how many people were like going nuts trying to figure out, which Violator was which Violator in the in the land of McFarlane repaints.
Yep.
You know,
Oh man.
because I remember there was an issue of, let's go back to Wizard, that covered the entire, because Wizard was also part of the Toy Fair magazine.
Yep.
And
Toy Fair was great, and Toy Fair became Robot Chicken.
Mhm.
All those guys ended up going off and doing Robot Chicken.
But I remember there was an issue that the entire thing was dedicated to the Spawn toy line,
Mm.
and it broke down, all the different, repaints or, sculpts. Well, I know it says this on the package, but if you look and it has this, it's the Chase figure. If it's not there, it's just the regular one. And it was, it was insane because the toy store that I've been going to for 35 years, we all work. The owner now used to be the manager, and him, myself, and a few other people all worked there. And every night we'd lock up the store and we'd run up to Toys R Us and Circus World and, KB Toys. And we'd all split up and we'd hit a different store. We'd be like, okay, these are what we're looking for. And it was either we were looking for Spawn figures or we were looking to see if we could find any, every once in a while, somebody would find like a case of like Superpowers figures that had been sitting in a warehouse forever. And it would show up to like one of these small mall toy stores.
Yeah.
And, we just go grab that. We had like an entire corner of the shop that was nothing but Spawn. It was crazy.
Yeah, no, it was absolutely. That was a good time.
It's not going away. He's still going.
I think he'll get that movie made. I think he'll get that new movie made. I know Jamie Foxx wants to do it. So
yeah, that name just sends chills down my spine now because of the Electro announcement.
Maybe he just needs a good movie to be a part of.
Yeah, I know, but like, it's a sequel. Everybody will go and watch it. It doesn't matter what it is.
That's true.
Kind of like the producers years ago that wanted Nicolas Cage to be Superman, and
right.
he was going to fight polar bears on the way to the Fortress of Solitude, and he wasn't He wasn't flying there. He was walking.
Yeah.
Why? Well, that's just what we're envisioning. We want to.
Yeah, Nicolas Cage as Superman. Just no.
No. I had a hard enough time with him as Ghost Rider.
I can't even say I watched those.
I'm a sucker for anything comic book wise.
No shame in that.
So, what comics originally got you into loving it?
So I was a huge fan of the Mutant Ninja Turtles. So the cartoon show, I used to wake up on Sunday mornings. So this was like the first season when it was out. And Saturday morning cartoons was a huge thing, but Sunday morning cartoons were usually absolute garbage. And so at 7:30 in the morning on it wasn't even like NBC or anything like that. It was like, Channel 11, for me. I used to just watch, and I tuned in and I was like, this show is awesome. And I was 10 years old and it was just the greatest thing. And Actually, I was like 9 even. I was in 4th grade. And then my friends also got into it, and we just started making these Mutant Ninja Turtle comics. And so that I still have them. I made like 32 of them or 40 of them. I mean, wrote and draw like all these, different adventures. And then what do you call same one of the same friends who I'm still friends with today. We got into the Marvel cards, and he handed me a Spider-Man comic. It was Spectacular Spider-Man. I want to say 158 with Shocker. I gotta look this up because I know I'm gonna forget it. But yeah, and then I became a Spider-Man guy, and that was and I just became just all Marvel at that point. And then as you get into being a teenager, you get into X-Men because that's what you do. And that was also, again, look, that was right around the time Jim Lee was drawing X-Men. I mean, it was
Oh yeah.
I mean, you don't realize like what a oh, it wasn't 158. I think it was 152. Anyway, you don't realize sometimes how good you have it until you don't have it, right? And I mean those 90s runs of all the books. I mean, think about it too. Right before Image started, you had Liefeld on X-Force, you had Jim Lee on X-Men, you had Will Spartasio on Uncanny X-Men, you had Mark Silvestri drawing Wolverine, you had Todd McFarlane drawing Spider-Man, you had Eric Larson drawing Spider-Man, who I absolutely love Eric Larson as well too. And I was even a fan of Jim Valentino's Guardians of the Galaxy. He was kind of always that smaller one of the bunch in terms of like what he had accomplished at that point. But his Guardians run is still an amazing run. That was all Marvel talent. Claremont writing the X-Men books with these guys. Fabian Nicieza, who's become a good friend of mine, which is another cool thing. And I mean, like, how lucky were we? Like, you just didn't even know how lucky we were to have that amount of talent. And don't get me wrong. I mean, I think the 2000s were an amazing time as well. I laughed at the Ultimate Universe, but the Ultimate Universe produced the Ultimates with Brian Hitch and Mark Millar, kind of putting his stamp on things. Brian Bendis, being who he was and creating so many great stories. But I think there's these things. You go on these little runs of just great creativity, and you get to be a fan of that. And the early 90s were definitely that for me.
Oh yeah. The biggest mistake I made in the 90s was, when I fell in love with Jim Lee's artwork was, okay, I got to buy multiples of every X-Men book.
I sat in on a signing he did because he was up near me. And I mean, I was doing an interview with him, and he's literally just sketching away as I'm doing this interview. And all of a sudden, like, it's just Wolverine drawn by Jim Lee, and he wasn't even looking at the paper half the time, and it was just like, and it just became like, well, I'm like, oh my god, and it was just one of the most amazing drawings, like, so. I mean, the amount of talent he has, it's unmatched, absolutely unmatched.
Oh yeah, I wish he would just go back to, being an artist instead of the corporate guy that he is now.
Well, I mean, DiDio was mostly the corporate guy. Jim Lee was, I think, he's a smart enough guy to know, to know what to do in that position. But he also, had I think a bigger hand in the creative aspect to it. So now it's just him, and he's got to be front and center asking questions. So, I mean, who knows? Who knows what the future of DC is going to be? They've done some interesting things this past year for sure.
Yeah, the whole G5 thing that Dan wanted to do.
Yeah,
and now, like, I go, oh, he's gone, so that's squashed.
Yep.
And then I see the announcement for the beginning of next year, and I'm like, oh, they redid G5, so we're going to get like 2 months of what if stories of the G5 universe. And I'm like,
yep.
Well, on the plus side, I can save myself a whole lot of money by not buying any DC comics. And and I don't buy. Marvel. It's Immortal Hulk.
Right.
I mean, it's that I think is like probably like the best book I think they've put out in years.
Yeah. Marvel keeps reinventing itself, which is which is good. I'm actually looking at the 5G stuff right now, too. I guess Future State Line, not part of DC Universe. Yeah. Yeah. Oh well.
And I'm like, I kind of, and of course the first thing they do is, because we get all the PR, so the first thing they do is start rushing out, cover images because it's the generation of variants.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Ooh, store exclusives, and so that's going to lead me into what are your thoughts? Because one, you're a creator, but even on the flip side of the way, because I see a lot of people that they're collecting, but they're not collecting. We would collect and read. The books month after month. We collect them, we slap them in a bag and a board, put them in a box, keep them nice. Get bored and snowed in or something for a week, and you break into a comic box and you read, a favorite run or something. But I see so many people that are just jumping at like all these store exclusives, like the limited to 400, and they know everybody wants the Virgin variant, so you can only buy the Virgin variant if you buy the set. And then they started, and then some of them started with and we'll sell you the set, but we're not going to guarantee it at 9.8 unless you pay 3 times the amount for the set.
Right.
Or like triple the amount, for the graded for the signed and graded copies, or do you think all that's like, so far out of hand? Or
well, I'll say this. I'll say a couple things, right? One is doing the Plan 59 Kickstarter. So James Massey from Dren Productions, that's the publisher of that book. And we're working in conjunction with Tom Hutchinson from Big Dog Inc. And on Kickstarter, I mean, one of the things, we kind of talked about, the best strategies is to have variant covers. It's one of the things because it gets more people involved. It gets more people wanting this or that. Now, an indie Kickstarter is different than a Marvel or DC book doing variant covers. Don't get me wrong. It's not apples to apples, but the idea behind it was, we'll be able to earn more money by having variant covers. And even on the Time Trader, we ended up commissioning 2 extra covers than what we had originally had, just because that was a big thing. And some of these variant cover artists have gotten followings of their own, and people really liked, to buy their stuff. Like Steph Wilson's name was mentioned, and he does a very like, busty kind of style, like cartoony style, but he's got a following that goes along with it. So again, the idea of the variant cover is to make more money. It is to whoever the publisher is, whether it's an indie publisher or Marvel or DC, it's there to make more money or make the retailers more money. Although the retailers, I think, end up getting burned either way, but it is a sales tool. Now, flip it around the other side of things, though, right? Why is it a sales tool? Because it works. And if it didn't, if there was no demand for this stuff, they wouldn't do it. If we did, I think we did 6 covers for Plan 59. If we ended up not getting funded, the next time around, we would have been like, well, let's not do that again. Let's not do 6 covers again, but we did. And people bought the set, and some people just picked the one they liked, and it was effective. So, we can blame publishers for doing it, But at the end of the day, we're the ones buying it, so they're not going to stop doing it. It's like you sit there and go, oh gosh, I'm tired of this movie. Why'd they make another sequel? It's like, well, because you went and saw it. So if you didn't go see it, once you stop seeing the movie, they'll stop making the Friday the 13th, part 11. Like if you stopped after 2, there wouldn't be a part 11. So whether or not that's the kind of collecting we would do, I don't even collect anymore. I mean, I remember when I was kind of younger, the notion of owning something that had value was cool. Like buying, kind of owning. I actually it's funny. I recently finished my New Mutants collection of the Liefeld run, with the exception of like 87, which is Cable's first appearance, and Deadpool's first appearance, which are both like, super expensive. Maybe I'll buy it when I'm like 65. And at that point, my kids are out of college, so I don't care. But I was buying I got them cheap on Amazon, to be honest with you. I found some of these things, and I'm looking at these books, and I'm thinking to myself, man, when I was a kid, I mean, they used to be hanging up on the walls of the comic store, and it used to be like, $75, $100, and that's, back in the 90s, $75 is a lot of money. I mean, still a lot of money, but $75 now compared to what it was then, it was like, that was a lot of money for these books. So there was a cool thing about owning something that had value. So, but in my mind, I've been like, I'm never selling this. Like, I've got my Superman 75, bagged, and the Death of Superman issue. It's still bagged. It's still in its bag. But I also bought the reader version, so I could read the comic too. Those things are worthless now. And I don't care. Like, I don't care that they're worthless. Like, they have value to me because they remind me of a time that there was a craze for this kind of stuff. And the X-Men books that I bought, like, I actually finished up my Jim Lee collection of Uncanny X-Men too. I found like the second appearance of Gambit. I got that. I got the Captain America Wolverine issue. I got, a couple little holes I had in my collection. And it's a collection because it means something to me, not because it's worth something. So, but I'm not going to knock anybody for anything they do. I when I was younger, I would have, but now I'm kind of like, nah, it's cool. Like, you know what? If you want to buy all 18 variant covers that Marvel wants to put out, hey man, it's your money, and it's helping the comic book store out. So it's helping Marvel out. I can't.
I think the only one I did that with was, yet again, back to Batman.
Yeah.
Was Detective 1000.
Okay.
Now, I didn't go out and buy the store variants.
Mm-hmm.
I bought from an online dealer. I bought the pack he was offering. The 10 issues that DC put out themselves, so Batman through the decades, and the 10 covers, same issue.
Yeah.
And he had a store exclusive. So if you bought like, the entire set, if you bought the box set from DC, you got the free store exclusive, but the store exclusive wasn't a Detective 1000. The store exclusive was a homage cover to Detective 27, but it was Marat's Do You Poo series.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm like, there was only 75 of those made. So I'm like,
wow.
Yeah.
So, you know what? Like I said, if that's what gets you excited about comics, great. If you want to buy them, if you want to read them digitally, great. Like, to me, it's about the storytelling and creating something that you can get really excited about. And there's very few things out there that gets me excited again about comics. I thought the Powers of 10 series and the House of X, like, that was as close to, my X-Men that I kind of remember being for a long while. Mm-hmm. There's, again, certain books that get me excited, but whatever it is, as long as people are reading and buying, I'm cool with it.
And now the Exoswords with a 22-part crossover.
Yeah. That one I kind of lost steam on. I gotta pick that back up again. We'll figure it. I haven't been to the comic store as much with COVID.
I only bought one issue. It was like part 2, but I I bought it because I had to have the Alex Ross Angel cover. The Alex Ross Timeless covers.
Okay.
So I've got like a handful of those, but when I've got everything, I've got all the the Powers of 10 and the other one that went with it. I've got those. I still haven't read them yet.
Yeah.
Because I basically, from various podcasts, with other podcasts from, Outright Geekery and everything. Yeah, I pretty much know everything that happened already. One day I'll, when I have the time, I'll sit down and I'll like, take a day off and just power through and read, the whole thing. But with with the way it went and they turned around, it's like, okay, you got these two, and now we're going to launch 8 different mutant titles.
Yeah.
And then we're going to tie them together in a 22 arc story that you have to buy them all. And I went, nope.
Yeah. That's
I just became a trade waiter.
Yeah. I like trades a lot, actually. And it's funny. I mean, 10 years ago, it would have been like, no, I like the floppies, like the single issues. But now, forget it, man. For space reasons, just for, I'm a big fan of buying trades. I'm a big fan of, I'm not a huge, I still can't get into digital, but from a space saving perspective, I mean, one of the things with COVID too, and this is definitely not an isolated story. I'm sure many people are saying the same thing. I got to finally start organizing some of my collection, and I'm like, man, I got to get rid of these like copies of Generation X. Like, I'm not ever going to reread these books. Like, they're not even in bags. Like, I just threw them in a box somewhere, and I'm like, I got to get rid of this. Like, there's a lot of comics, man, that I just don't even need anymore.
Well, yeah, when they were redoing the Age of Apocalypse story for like the 90th time.
Ugh, I know.
I was just scrolling through Facebook on my phone, and Marketplace came up, and some guy had the complete omnibus for the original Age of Apocalypse.
Mm-hmm.
The 2 pre-issues and then the 4-part Legion story that led into Age of Apocalypse.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a $200 omnibus or something, and I got it for $20.
Wow.
So it's behind me on the table next to my recliner.
Yeah.
And everyone's I'll pick it up. So I got like all kinds of other books over there, and I'm trying to sort through and organize myself, and but I'll put on a movie that I've seen like a million times, and that I still enjoy the movie. I look up once in a while, but I'll sit and read about 20-30 pages of the book, put the bookmark back in, put it down, and finish the movie, make a cup of coffee, and read a couple modern books that I've got stacked up, and I had so many books from when I landed in the hospital into the coma that I hadn't read yet. I had like 2 folding 9-foot tables that were just stacks of comics all the way.
Wow.
Some that organized, none of them read. So, I'm looking at getting, all my collectibles and collection and everything back probably by next month.
Okay.
So, I'll be happy. It'll be my version of the rich guy rolling. It'll be like my version when I get all my comics back. It'll be kind of like,
mm-hmm.
Scrooge McDuck rolling around the money in his vault. Except, me, it'll be comics, and I won't roll on them because, I don't want to cause a crease.
Sure. That's awesome.
So besides your books,
mm-hmm.
would you recommend an indie book?
Oh yeah, Stray Bullets. I don't know if you haven't ever read that, you got to read it. It's the most amazing. That's my favorite book, comic. Period. I picked it up in college. He went like on a 10-year hiatus. It was crazy, but then Image brought him back. It is they label it like a crime comic, and it is. It follows like this these characters that are all revolve around like a Baltimore crime gang, but it is some of the most nuanced storytelling, humanized characters. There's a I don't even know how to phrase this so it doesn't sound creepy, but there's a molestation run story that is probably one of the most powerful stories that deal with such a terrible subject, but in such a, I mean, it was, I mean, you read it and you're, I mean, it's unbelievable. Like, so I don't know, David Lapham's just a creative genius, and I met him a few times. He's actually a really awesome dude, and I'm glad he brought Stray Bullets back. And you guys should go buy the original run. I think Image released it was only 40 issues, the original run, so he had all 40 issues, and then he came out with a new series called Sunshine and Roses, and I'm waiting for that to end. I don't know what happened to it, but it's, I don't know, 20, 30 issues in already to that. So but it's almost like watching Pulp Fiction. Pulp Fiction is actually a really good analogy for it, in the sense that it's not a straight linear story. You meet the characters at different times. Certain characters that may have died, kind of come back, but it's because he's telling stuff that happened before they die. And the way he kind of, like, issue 5, like, for example, is a big, or I think it's issue 5. Yeah, it's issue 5. It's a big cliffhanger. And maybe it's actually issue 2. I don't know. One of those issues is like a big cliffhanger, and the next issue has nothing to do with it, right? It just goes on to another group of people within this circle, tells their story, yada yada yada. Like 6, 7 issues later, it circles back to 2 of the main characters from that cliffhanger issue, and they're out of Baltimore. They're on the run, across the country now from these criminals, and they just have this like little conversation, 2-panel conversation, and it's like, well, it's not my fault, my boyfriend got executed, and you're like, oh, that's what happened, like and it's like you don't get to see it, you don't get to even know it happened. But if you're smart, not if you're smart enough, but if you're quick enough to like pick up on it, you're like, oh, that was what the, so it's like answering the ending to Sopranos in a 2-panel little conversation. And it allows you to kind of fill the blanks in, and it's not done in an annoying way. Doing that can be annoying, right? It could annoy the reader or frustrate the reader. It's done in such a way that it allows you to do it in an enjoyable way. So go read Stray Bullets. It's great.
And finally, if you can pick anybody in the field to work with on a project, who would it be and why?
That's a good question. You know what? I will go stupid lame answer and just say Jim Lee. Like, I think if I could have my characters drawn by him, that'd be cool. Like, I'm good. I actually love Eric Larson too. I would love to have. I could go either one, Eric Larson or Jim Lee. Eric Larson I love because I thought his Savage Dragon run, and he's obviously still on Savage Dragon. That's an admirable and amazing thing. I stopped reading it when he killed off Savage Dragon and his son took over. But his initial, like, I don't know, first 50 issues of Savage Dragon, I remember reading it, and he was just so off the wall. And so zany with like, I remember he like had Savage Dragon like fight God. He had him like coming out of the butt of like a monster at one point. He had Hellboy in there. Like, he was just doing whatever kind of excited him. So, and I always loved his artwork, so I would love to see him. But yeah, no, I think just Jim Lee. Yeah, Jim Lee drawing the sire. There you go. I'm good. Like, good night. I'm done. I can go home now.
All right, Jim, you hear that? Like you would ever be watching my podcast.
Hey, you never know. You never know.
You can never tell. But I wanna thank you for joining us and hanging out and chatting all things geek tonight. All of Michael's information and places you can find him on the interwebs are either up above or down below, depending on where you're watching us at.
Yep.
And that's going to wrap up another episode of Creators Outlet. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again very soon. Enjoy your weekend.